The hospital hallway was supposed to be quiet, but tonight it echoed with screams. Savannah's voice cut through the air like broken glass. "Don't you dare touch him! That baby is a lie! Your entire life is a lie!" Lila could barely breathe. One hand held the rail of her hospital bed, the other held her stomach. 9 months pregnant. Terrified. A nurse tried to intervene, but Savannah shoved her aside, eyes wild, mascara streaked, diamond earrings shaking with every breath. And behind her, just standing there, watching, was her ex-husband, Cole Mercer, silent, expression unreadable, hands in his coat pockets. He wasn't stopping it. He wasn't defending anyone. He wasn't saying a word. Why? Hold that question, because before we go any deeper, tell me real quick in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you're new here, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of this story. Trust me, what's about to happen is going to leave you thinking about it for days. All right, now let's continue. Savannah took one step closer to Lila's bed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You should have stayed gone." Savannah's fingers curled into the blanket near Lila's leg, knuckles white, shaking with rage. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting sharp shadows across the room. Lila's breath came in short, uneven waves. She leaned back, one hand still protecting her stomach. "Savannah, stop." Her voice was barely a whisper, but Savannah didn't stop. She leaned in closer, lips inches from Lila's ear. "You think this changes anything? You think he'll come back to you? He chose me." The words were ice. Lila didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said enough. The silence said, he didn't choose anyone. He simply left. A nurse called for security. Footsteps rushed somewhere down the hall. Savannah lifted her head, eyes burning. Cole still hadn't moved. He stood by the door, suit immaculate, posture calm, watching the woman he once vowed to cherish, and the woman he now legally called his wife, destroy each other in the same room. Not one word, not one blink. The tension wrapped around the room like barbed wire. Lila's voice trembled. "Please, just let me have this moment. Please." Savannah laughed, a sharp, fractured sound. "This moment? This baby? You think you deserve anything after what you did?" The accusation hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Lila flinched, but only for a second. Her eyes lifted and met Cole's. For the first time in months, their eyes locked. Time slowed. Something old, something unfinished, something that never died. And that was the exact moment security burst in. 2 guards, fast and stern. They grabbed Savannah by both arms. She fought them, kicking, screaming, hair falling from its perfect pins. "Cole, say something. Tell her the truth." But Cole didn't look at Savannah. He was still staring at Lila. Quiet, still, unreadable. Savannah's voice cracked as the guards dragged her into the hallway. "Tell her why you left." The hallway swallowed her scream. The room fell silent. The only sound left was the slow, steady beeping of the monitor beside Lila's bed. Cole finally stepped forward, just one step. No apology, no explanation, no emotion. Only this. "We need to talk. Alone." The summer air in Charleston carried the smell of jasmine and salt water. The Mercer estate sat at the edge of the river, white stone walls glowing under the warm southern sun. The kind of place people whispered about, wealth so old it didn't need to prove itself. Lila Warren stood on the balcony that morning, robe tied loosely at her waist, hair pulled into a sleepy knot. She looked out over the water, the ripples catching gold from the sunrise. Peaceful, almost unreal. Inside, the house staff moved quietly. No noise, no stress. Everything in Cole Mercer's world was designed to look effortless. He entered the room behind her, jacket already on, tie already perfect. Cole wasn't the type to rush. Every move he made was exact. "You're up early," Lila said softly, still watching the river. "I have a board meeting in Savannah," he replied. His voice was smooth, steady, predictable, the voice she once believed could hold back the world. She turned to face him. "Will you be home for dinner?" He hesitated, just long enough for her to feel it. "I'll try." That sentence had become a pattern. "I'll try. We'll see. Maybe tomorrow." Promises that weren't quite promises. Lila stepped closer, fingers reaching for his tie to straighten it like she always did. A small routine that once meant love, gentleness, belonging. But today, Cole stopped her hand. Not roughly, just firmly. "I have to go," he said. Something tightened inside her chest, but she didn't speak on it. She only nodded. He walked past her, footsteps silent on the marble floor. At the door, he paused. "Don't make plans tonight." She smiled, hopeful. "Dinner?" "No. My family is coming." The hope dimmed. The Mercer family didn't visit. They inspected. Her smile didn't break, though. She had learned to wear composure like jewelry. "I'll be ready," she said. Cole looked at her for a moment, a long one. Eyes soft, like he wanted to say something else, something real. But he didn't. He left. The door closed gently behind him. The silence returned. Lila stood still for a long time before she finally walked into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and took 2 steadying breaths. Being married to a man like Cole Mercer wasn't hard because of the wealth. It was hard because of everything that came with it. Later that evening, the Mercer family arrived. Sharp suits, pearls, confidence that bordered on cruelty. They sat in the dining room like they owned the air in the house. Lila served tea with a steady hand. Cole's mother looked her over with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How are you settling into your role here?" she asked. Lila answered with practiced grace. "Just fine, thank you." His mother nodded, as if bored already. Then she said it. "Any plans for children?" The question hung in the air, heavy as stone. Cole's fork paused mid-air. Lila swallowed, gently placing the teapot down. "We're taking our time," she replied. His mother looked displeased. "Don't take too long. The Mercer legacy needs stability, image, direction." There it was. Not family, not love. Legacy, image, direction. Lila excused herself from the table with the same grace she entered it. She made it to the hallway, then the bathroom, then sat on the closed toilet seat, hands trembling. She wasn't crying, just breathing. Slow, controlled, like a woman holding herself together in a world that believed she was lucky to be drowning in wealth. Winter came early that year. Charleston was gray, the river still, the sky heavy with clouds that looked like unspoken words. Lila stood in the foyer of the estate, coat halfway on, keys in her hand. She was supposed to meet Cole for lunch downtown. A small olive branch between 2 people who had begun speaking through silence instead of conversation. But Cole wasn't in the foyer. He was sitting in the study. Door open, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. A single folder lying flat on the desk in front of him. She didn't feel fear. She felt nothing. The kind of nothing that comes right before something breaks. "Lila," he said without looking up. Something in his voice made her stop. She stepped closer, slow, careful, as if approaching a cliff. "What is that?" she asked. Cole finally lifted his eyes. They looked the same as always, calm, steady, unreadable. "Sit," he said. She didn't sit. He opened the folder, divorce papers. The floor didn't fall, the world didn't spin, reality didn't dissolve. Instead, everything sharpened. The chair legs, the morning light, the quiet ticking of the clock. "Why?" she asked. Her voice didn't tremble. "Not yet." Cole didn't blink. "This is what needs to happen. Needs, not wants, not feels. Needs." Lila stepped closer. "For who?" He didn't answer. She tried again. "For your family?" Still nothing. Her voice lowered. "For you?" His jaw tightened. That was the tell. The one he couldn't hide. He was lying to himself. She swallowed, but no tears came. Tears require hope. This moment did not. "I don't understand," she whispered. Cole finally stood, tall, cold, a statue of a man she once held like a heartbeat. "This marriage isn't sustainable. The attention, the scrutiny, the expectations. I can't." He stopped. He never ran out of words. He chose to. Lila waited, and then he said something she would remember forever. "This is the cleanest way to protect you. Protect." The word sliced deeper than goodbye. Lila shook her head slowly. "Protect me from what?" His silence was the answer. He slid a pen across the desk. The sound was soft, almost gentle, a kindness wrapped in cruelty. Lila didn't scream. She didn't fight. She didn't break. She simply picked up the pen. Then she put it back down. "I loved you," she said, the past tense landing like a blade. Cole closed his eyes. Just once. Just briefly. As if the words hit something inside his ribs. When he opened them again, the walls were back. The ones she used to think she could climb. "You'll have the house," he said quietly. "The car, financial security, everything you need." Everything but him. Lila nodded. Not acceptance, recognition. She turned, walked up the stairs slowly, one hand on the banister, the same way she'd walked up on the night she first moved in. But this time, the house felt different. Too large for one heartbeat, too silent for one voice. She packed one suitcase, only one, not out of pride, not out of defeat, but because she needed to leave before she remembered what loving him felt like. She walked past the study on her way out. Cole didn't call after her. He didn't stop her. He didn't move. She opened the front door. The winter air hit her face like cold water. Lila didn't look back. Not once. The door closed behind her, soft and final. Atlanta was nothing like Charleston. The air was thicker. The streets were louder. Life moved fast enough here that no one stopped to watch you break. Lila rented a small apartment above a bakery on Crescent Avenue. One bedroom, thin walls, a view of a brick alley, and the back of a neon bar sign. She didn't choose it for comfort. She chose it because it was quiet enough in the mornings to remember how to breathe. She found work at the bakery downstairs, early shifts, flour on her fingertips, warm bread smell filling the air before the sun even thought of rising. Customers came and went, some kind, some tired, some angry at nothing. No one knew who she was. No one cared about the Mercer name. For the first time in years, she was invisible, and for a while, that felt like relief. But invisibility has a weight of its own. Some nights, she sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, lights off, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Not crying, just feeling the ache of everything that used to be hers. One morning she woke up dizzy. The room spun. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the bathroom sink. The test stick lay on the counter. One pink line. Then slowly, painfully, another. She stared at it for a long time, the world silent around her. She wasn't imagining this. She wasn't dreaming. She was pregnant. Her hand moved to her stomach, fingers trembling. Cole, his child, their child. She sank to the floor, not from weakness, from the weight of knowing what this meant. She didn't call him. She didn't even reach for her phone. She sat there, knees pulled to her chest, forehead resting against her arms. When she finally stood, her decision was already made. This child would not be raised in the Mercer world, not under those eyes, not under those shadows, not as a pawn, not as leverage. This child would have peace. Months passed. Her stomach grew. The bakery customers learned her name. She walked to the park on her days off, sitting on a bench with her journal, writing baby names no one else would see. No news, no contact, no interference from Charleston. Then one afternoon the bell above the bakery door chimed. Lila turned, wiping her hands on her apron. A man in a gray suit stood at the counter. too well dressed for this place, too still, too observant. He didn't order, he just spoke her name. Ms. Warren. Her heart didn't race, she didn't panic. She simply looked at him and waited. He nodded once, polite, almost kind. Mr. Mercer instructed me to ensure all of your medical expenses are covered, without exception. Lila froze. He knew all along. The man placed an envelope on the counter. No logo, no signature, just wait. If you ever feel unsafe, call the number inside, day or night. Lila didn't touch the envelope. The man gave a respectful incline of his head before leaving. The bell chimed again. Silence returned. Lila stood there, hands motionless, flower dust drifting through the sunlight. Cole had known. From the beginning. He hadn't tried to stop her. He hadn't tried to reach her. He had simply watched from a distance, protecting her, or abandoning her. She didn't know. She didn't have the energy to decide. She picked up the envelope. She didn't open it. She slid it into a drawer beneath the cash register and walked back to kneading dough, hands steady, heartbeat slow. Outside, life continued. Inside, everything had changed. Spring came to Charleston early that year. Warm winds, pink azaleas, river water glittering under bright southern sun. But the Mercer estate no longer belonged to quiet mornings and slow-moving routines. It belonged to headlines, to camera flashes, to the kind of spectacle that only wealth can stage. The news broke first on society blogs, then on local papers, then everywhere. Cole Mercer to marry Savannah Blake. Savannah Blake, daughter of Blake Shipping and Trade, well-bred, well-groomed, polished like a diamond someone else paid to shape. Their wedding wasn't intimate, it wasn't tender, it was grand. The kind of grand where violins play even when no one is listening, where champagne flows like it costs nothing, where every guest carries a last name that opens doors. Savannah looked radiant in lace and pearls. Cole stood beside her, expression composed, posture perfect, every movement measured. He was not in love, but no one there cared about that. This was alliance. This was reputation. This was a deal dressed in flowers and silk. Photographers lined the walkway, reporters whispered. Family members smiled, too wide. Cole said the vows, Savannah said hers. Their hands touched, their rings slid into place. The crowd cheered. Somewhere in Atlanta, Lila was wiping flour from her counter when her co-worker's phone lit up with a news alert. She didn't look, she didn't ask, she kept working. But later that night, alone in her apartment, she sat in the quiet and let the stillness settle. Her baby moved beneath her hand, a small flutter, a reminder of a love story no one else would ever know. She didn't cry. She had cried before. She had learned how to stop. Meanwhile, in the grand ballroom of the Blake estate, Savannah mingled through crowds of glittering guests, accepting congratulations, gracious and smiling. Cole stood near the open balcony doors, away from the noise. The city lights shimmered below. For a moment his hand drifted to the ring on his finger, thumb brushing the metal. Savannah approached, her silk gown whispering across the floor. "Everything all right?" she asked, voice sweet, eyes sharp. Cole nodded. "Fine." Savannah leaned closer. "You don't have to pretend with them, but you should try with me." Her smile looked soft. It wasn't. He nodded once. Neither spoke. The party roared on. Savannah's fingers traced his arm, seeking reassurance. Cole's eyes remained distant. Homeware, far from champagne and chandeliers. Somewhere in a bakery above Crescent Avenue. Somewhere with a woman who now slept with her hand resting on her stomach, holding on to the quiet life she had built from the ashes of everything she lost. And though neither of them spoke each other's names aloud anymore, the silence between them still knew. Savannah noticed the change long before anyone else did. At first, it was small. Cole stopped touching her hand during events. He answered her questions with quick, efficient replies. He listened, but not really. His mind was somewhere else. At night, he sat beside her in bed with his back straight, shoulders rigid, eyes on the ceiling instead of her. She pretended not to care, but pretending has a short shelf life. One evening she found him in his study, staring at a closed drawer. He shut it as soon as she entered. She smiled, a polite, practiced smile. "Planning the charity event?" she asked lightly. "No," he said. No explanation, no follow-up. She waited for him to ask about her day. He didn't. She brushed her fingers along the marble desk, slow and thoughtful. "You've been distant." Cole said nothing. "Tell me if I've done something wrong." Still nothing. Savannah stepped closer. "Cole." He finally looked at her. Not angry, not irritated, empty. There are many ways to be unloved. This was the quietest. Savannah's jaw tightened, but her smile didn't crack. She walked out of the study and closed the door behind her. That night she lay awake beside him, staring into the dark. She had won the wedding, the ring, the name, the mansion, the status, but she had not won the man. The man was somewhere else. Someone else held his quiet. Someone else held the version of him that felt alive. Savannah needed to know who. 3 days later, she found it. She was scrolling through Cole's old phone photos, the device he no longer used but hadn't erased. A museum of another life. Lila appeared in almost every memory. She wasn't posing. She wasn't styled. She wasn't trying to be seen. She was laughing at a wind-blown napkin at a cafe table. She was leaning her head into Cole's shoulder while waiting at a red light. She was barefoot on the balcony watching the river. Simple moments. Moments that didn't need an audience. Savannah studied Lila's face, not glamorous, not dramatic, not adorned, just warm and real. Savannah felt something hot burn in her throat. Not hatred, not jealousy. Fear. Because she knew, you cannot compete with someone who was loved in silence. Savannah slammed the phone face down on the dresser, chest rising and falling fast. She needed proof, confirmation, facts. She hired a private investigator, the best one her father's money could buy. He delivered results in less than a week. Lila Warren, Atlanta, living above a bakery, 7 months pregnant. Savannah's world narrowed to a single point of rage. She paced the floor of her walk-in closet, hands shaking, nails cutting into her palm. Cole knew. He knew. And he said nothing. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. It wasn't coincidence. It was history continuing without her. Savannah whispered into the empty room. He was never mine. She walked into the bathroom, bracing herself against the marble counter. Her reflection stared back at her, beautiful, flawless, terrified. Fear turned to fury. Fury turned to obsession. Obsession found a direction. She grabbed her handbag, keys inside, no hesitation, no plan, just purpose. The kind that destroys everything in its path. She got in her car and drove. The highway stretched long and empty between Charleston and Atlanta, night pressing close around the car. Savannah drove with one hand clenched tightly around the steering wheel. The radio was off. The road hummed. Her breathing was uneven, sharp. City lights rose in the distance. Noise, movement, life that didn't know her. A place where no one cared about last names. She found the bakery easily, a small brick building with chalkboard signs and flower boxes made from crates. Warm light glowed behind the windows, the kind of place where life was gentle. Savannah sat in her car across the street, watching through the glass. Lila was inside, hair tied back, wearing a loose sweater, sweeping flour from a wooden counter. Her movements were slow, soft, quiet. Her belly rounded beneath the fabric, visible, unavoidable, undeniable. Savannah's chest tightened until it hurt. She had imagined someone glamorous, manipulative, dangerous. But Lila looked tired, human, still trying. And somehow that made it worse. Savannah's fingers trembled as she turned off the engine. She stepped out, heels clicking across the pavement. The bell above the bakery door chimed softly as she entered. Lila looked up. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply stared at each other, two women tied to the same man in two entirely different ways. Lila set the broom aside. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice quiet. Savannah's eyes flicked to her stomach, then to her face. "How far along are you?" she asked. Lila didn't answer. Savannah stepped closer. "Is it his?" Silence. Silence says what words don't. Savannah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You always knew how to make an entrance, didn't you?" Lila's jaw tightened. "I didn't call him. I didn't ask him to come. I didn't want this." "Then why didn't you disappear?" Savannah asked. "I did," Lila replied. "You came to me." Savannah's breath stuttered. For a moment, there was no rage, just exhaustion. Two women standing in the ruins of choices they didn't get to make. Then the moment passed. Savannah's eyes hardened. "You think that child changes anything?" Lila's hand moved back to her stomach, instinctive and protective. Savannah saw it, and something in her broke. She reached out. Not gently, Lila stepped back. "Don't," Lila whispered. But Savannah was already shaking, emotion spilling over into something wild. "This was supposed to be my life, my marriage, my future. You don't get to keep him. You don't get to keep any of this." Her voice rose. The bell above the door chimed again as a gust of wind pushed it open. Savannah's voice cracked. "He promised me we were done with you." Lila closed her eyes for one small moment. When she opened them, her voice was quiet, steady, final. "He promised me forever." Savannah froze. The words slammed straight into the center of everything she feared. The bakery felt too small for both of them. A car slowed outside. Headlights swept across the window. Savannah blinked, then walked backward. 1 step, 2, 3. She didn't speak again. She turned and left. The bell chimed as she stepped into the night. Lila watched the door close. Only when she was alone did she realize her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from knowing this wasn't over, not even close. The evening came heavy with rain. Thunder rolled low across the Atlanta skyline, slow and distant, like something gathering strength. The bakery was closed. The streets were slick with water. Neon signs glowed in puddles. Lila stood by the kitchen sink, one hand pressed to her lower back. The ache had been faint all day, a slow, dull pressure. But now it came sharp, rhythmic, deeper than pain. Something shifting, something beginning. She braced her hands on the counter and breathed through it. In, hold, out. The baby moved. Not a flutter this time, a push. Impatient, ready. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling, and dialed the rideshare. No family nearby, no Cole to call, no one but herself. She grabbed her hospital bag, the one she kept packed for weeks, just in case. The elevator rattled on the way down. The hallway smelled of laundry soap and someone cooking onions in a nearby unit. Life went on around her, unbothered, unaware. Outside, the rain was steady. The car pulled up. The driver leaned over to unlock the door. Lila slid in, exhaling as another contraction gripped her. "You all right?" the driver asked, eyes flicking to her stomach. "Hospital," Lila managed. "Please." He nodded and drove. The city blurred past through streaked windows. Streetlights smeared into long bands of gold. Horns, crosswalk signals, sirens in the distance, everything moving too fast and too slow at once. Inside the hospital, nurses moved quickly, warm hands on her shoulder, calm voices guiding her. A wheelchair she didn't argue about. They brought her to a delivery room. Monitors beeped. IV bags dripped. The rain tapped the window like quiet suspense. Lila breathed, focused, held herself together. Hours passed like minutes and years. The contractions grew sharper, closer, deeper. Pain that felt like memory tearing and rebuilding inside her body. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She held on, because she had done harder things. The nurses stepped out briefly to review her charts. The room was still. too still. The door opened. Footsteps entered. Slow, measured. Lila turned her head. Savannah stood there in a white coat she had no right to wear, hair damp from the rain, eyes wide with a storm of emotion. She wasn't here to watch. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to destroy. Lila reached for the call button, but Savannah's hand was faster. "Don't," Savannah whispered. "You don't understand what you've done." Her voice was shaking, not with rage this time, but with something deeper, something hollow. "You took everything from me." Lila's breath caught. Another contraction hit. Hard. She clutched the side rails of the bed, unable to speak. Savannah stepped closer and closer. Her hands weren't fists now. They were open, empty, dangerous. "You took the part of him that can love," she said, voice cracking. Lila tried to move, to turn, to protect her stomach, but pain held her still. Savannah reached for her, just as the door slammed open. 2 nurses rushed in. They pulled Savannah away. Voices overlapped. Security was called. The hallway erupted in chaos, and then the footsteps, slow, heavy, controlled. Cole stepped into the room, rainwater still on his coat, face unreadable, eyes locked on Lila first, not Savannah, not the nurses, Lila. The room fell silent. Savannah's breath hitched. "Cole?" He didn't look at her. He didn't speak to her. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "Everyone out." No one questioned it. Not the nurses, not security, not Savannah. Not the nurses, Lila. The room fell silent. Savannah's breath hitched. "Cole?" He didn't look at her. He didn't speak to her. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "Everyone out." No one questioned it. Not the nurses, not security, not Savannah. She was led away, shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. The door closed. The world outside the hospital room faded to a distant storm. Lila lay back, breathing hard, tears finally slipping free. Not from pain, but from everything. Cole stepped closer. His voice was quiet, controlled, breaking at the edges. "I'm here." Just that, nothing more, but it was enough to shatter the silence between them. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. Cole stood beside the bed, hands at his sides, rain still clinging to the sleeves of his coat. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He just stood there, the way a man stands when he's been running for a long time and finally stops. Lila's breathing slowly steadied. The contraction passed, leaving her drained, eyes closed, head tilted back against the pillow. Cole reached for the chair in the corner, the one meant for partners, husbands, fathers, and pulled it up beside her bed. He sat, not close enough to touch, but close enough to stay. The lights hummed above them. The rain tapped the window in steady rhythm. Silence stretched between them, not empty this time, but full of every moment they had never spoken about. Lila opened her eyes. Her voice was fragile, but honest. "Why are you here?" Cole didn't look away. "Because you shouldn't be alone." Lila let out a faint, tired laugh. Not from humor, but disbelief. "You made sure of that." His jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. Another contraction began. Lila gripped the bed rails. Her breath trembled. Cole rose from the chair instantly, not touching her, but ready. "Breathe," he said softly. Her eyes closed. In, hold, out. When it passed, she slumped back, exhausted. Cole spoke again, voice low, careful, as if the words were made of glass. "I know you hate me." Lila didn't respond. Hate was too small for what she felt. Cole's eyes lowered to her stomach, to their child. "When I left, I didn't stop caring." Lila turned her head toward him. Her voice was thin, but sharp. "You stopped loving me." For the first time that night, something broke in his expression. "No," he said. Not loud, but absolute. Lila stared at him, at the face she once kissed every morning, memorized every line of, trusted without question. "Then why did you leave?" she whispered. Cole didn't breathe for a moment. Then he said the words he had never said to anyone. "I didn't leave you. I left to keep you safe." The room stilled. The storm outside paused as if listening. Lila shook her head, tears slipping down her temples. "Safe from what?" Cole didn't answer. Not yet. The heart rate monitor beeped steadily. The rain pressed harder against the glass. He sat back down, quiet, still, present. Lila's voice was barely a breath. "You let me think I wasn't enough." Cole closed his eyes, and there it was, the truth he could not take back. "I knew if I told you, you would have tried to stay." Lila's hands curled around the blanket. Because it was true, she would have. "And staying," he said, "would have destroyed you." Lila shut her eyes, overwhelmed. Pain, memory, love, loss, all tangled like threads pulled apart too fast. The door opened softly. A nurse entered, smiling gently. "It's time," she said. "We're moving into delivery." Cole stood up. Lila looked at him, searching for something. Maybe a reason to trust him, maybe a reason not to. Then another contraction hit. Sharp, deep, undeniable. Her hand reached out. Without thinking, without hesitation. And Cole took it. Firm, steady, unshakable. They said nothing. They didn't need to. They walked into the delivery room together. For the first time since the divorce, they moved as one. The delivery room lights were softer, warm, controlled, meant to calm. But nothing about this moment was calm. Lila's hand gripped Cole's with a strength that surprised both of them. She breathed through every wave of pain, jaw clenched, eyes focused on the ceiling. Nurses moved with quiet urgency. The doctor watched the monitor. The storm outside broke fully, rain hitting the windows in heavy sheets. Time blurred, minutes stretched, hours collapsed. And then, a cry. Small, new, fragile, powerful. The nurse lifted the newborn, swaddled in soft white cloth. Tiny fist, tiny breath, warm skin. Lila didn't speak. Her chest rose in silent, shaking relief. Cole stepped closer, slow, like he was approaching something sacred. The nurse placed the baby into Lila's arms. Lila looked down, eyes softening, world slowing. And in that moment, in that first long look, everything inside her cracked open. The nurse turned to Cole. "Would you like to hold your daughter?" The room went still. Lila's eyes lifted to his. Daughter. Their daughter Cole's breath left him in one slow exhale, the kind that carried months of held pain. He reached forward, hands steady, and the nurse placed the tiny bundle into his arms. He didn't look like a billionaire now. He didn't look like a man who made impossible decisions. He didn't look powerful. He looked human. A man holding something he never thought he would deserve. The baby's small hand curled around his finger. His voice was almost a whisper. "I knew," he said. Lila's eyes widened. He looked up. Finally, fully. "I knew you were pregnant the day you left. I knew before the divorce was signed. I knew before you knew." Lila stared at him, stunned. The monitors hummed. The rain softened. Cole continued. "I paid your medical bills. I checked the hospital records. I kept people away from you. I made sure no one followed. I made sure no one could use you." His voice thickened, the first sign of emotion breaking through. "I didn't leave because I didn't love you, Lila." He looked down at the child he held. "I left because someone was going to hurt you if I didn't." Lila shook her head, tears finally falling. "Who?" she whispered. Cole's jaw tightened, his eyes darkened. The softness vanished. "My father," he said. The room seemed to tilt. Lila's breath caught. "Your father is gone," she whispered. Cole looked at her, and for the first time, she saw fear. "No," he said quietly. "He's not gone. He's been waiting." The storm outside thundered, rattling the windows. Lila froze. Savannah's voice echoed faintly in her memory. Tell her why you left." Everything clicked. The divorce, the silence, the protection, the distance, the marriage to Savannah. Cole hadn't chosen Savannah for love. He chose her family, their power, their alliances, their protection. He married a shield and sacrificed himself to keep Lila alive. Lila covered her mouth, not to hide the crying, but to hold in the scream rising from somewhere deep. Cole handed their daughter back to her, gentle, steady, careful. Then he sat beside the bed. No distance now, no silence, just truth that burned. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "I just couldn't keep you." Lila looked at him, broken, whole, terrified, relieved. She couldn't speak. She didn't need to. The baby stirred. Small fingers curled around Lila's gown. The storm outside quieted, not ended, just waiting. Savannah sat alone in the hospital waiting room. The fluorescent lights were harsh, humming overhead. The chairs were stiff and plastic, bolted to the floor. People passed through, nurses, patients, families. But no one looked at her. No one recognized her. No one cared who she was here. Her dress was wrinkled. Her mascara had dried in uneven streaks along her cheeks. Her hands were still shaking. She had never been invisible before. She stared at the floor, waiting for footsteps that never came. She expected Cole to come out and speak to her, tell her it was all a misunderstanding, tell her he chose her, tell her she mattered. But he didn't come. He stayed inside that room, with her. The woman Savannah could not outrun, outshine, or erase. The woman who did nothing but exist, and still, somehow, was everything. Savannah's breath trembled as the truth settled into her bones. She had married a man who never belonged to her, not truly, not even for a moment. She looked down at her wedding ring, gold, flawless, heavy. She pulled it off slowly. Her hand didn't shake this time. In the hallway, footsteps echoed. Savannah's head snapped up. Cole appeared at the end of the corridor, not walking toward her, walking past her. He wasn't angry. He wasn't cold. He simply didn't see her. That hurt more than any fury could. Savannah stood. "Cole." He stopped, but he didn't turn. Her voice broke, raw and stripped of every polished edge she ever had. "Please look at me." Cole turned slowly. No softness, no cruelty, just truth. Savannah stepped closer, clutching the ring in her fist. "Tell me I wasn't nothing." Cole's expression didn't change. "You were a choice," he said quietly, "not a love." Savannah's breath hitched. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I could have loved you." Cole nodded once. "And that is exactly why I never let you try." Savannah closed her eyes. A small, strangled sound left her throat. Not a sob, something deeper. She opened her hand. The ring fell to the floor. It didn't bounce. It just landed. Flat. Final. Savannah stepped back. "You're going to destroy me for this, aren't you?" Cole didn't raise his voice. "I'm going to end what was done to her." Savannah nodded. She understood. There was no anger left, no threats, no claws. Just the quiet collapse of a woman who finally saw the truth. She had never been the enemy. She had simply been in the wrong story. She turned and walked away. One step, then another, head high, heart shattered. The hallway swallowed her. She didn't look back. Inside the delivery room, Lila held their daughter against her chest. The baby's tiny breaths warmed her skin. Her eyelashes fluttered, her fingers curled. Cole entered quietly and sat beside the bed again. He didn't touch Lila. He didn't speak. He simply watched her, not like a man admiring something beautiful, but like a man realizing the thing he worshipped was never his to own, only his to protect. Lila didn't look at him. Her voice was soft, steady, and tired. "What happens now?" Cole exhaled, a slow, restrained breath. "Now," he said, "we prepare." His eyes shifted to the window, past the city, past the storm, past everything they could see. Because my family won't let this go. The monitor beeped gently. The baby slept. The world held still. For the first time, Lila didn't feel confusion. She felt fear, real fear. Because if Cole was afraid, the danger was already here. News travels fast, but scandals in Charleston move faster. By sunrise, every social feed in the city buzzed with the same headlines. Billionaire heir's wife attacks pregnant ex in hospital Mercer. Family in crisis, who is Lila Warren? Photos surfaced, the hospital hallway, security escorting Savannah. Cole standing between chaos and silence. There was no privacy left. The story became entertainment. Coffee shops whispered her name. Country clubs discussed her like a cautionary tale. Wealthy wives shook their heads behind wine glasses. The Mercer family issued no statement. And that silence was louder than any denial. In Atlanta, the bakery opened as usual. Warm lights, fresh bread, silver dawn rising behind rain-washed windows. But customers walked in differently now. They lingered. They stared. They whispered. Some looked at Lila with sympathy. Some with curiosity. Some with judgment sharpened into something ugly. One woman leaned in too close while Lila rang up her order. "I saw you on the news," she said, smiling like gossip was currency. "Must be exciting having a billionaire fighting over you." Lila didn't answer. She handed her the receipt. Her hand didn't shake. Her silence was dignity, but silence rarely protects forever. Back in Charleston, board members gathered in dark paneled offices, speaking with voices that were too calm to be harmless. Cole has compromised the family reputation. A child born outside a legal marriage? Scandalous. Savannah's family will retaliate. Blake Enterprises will not take this quietly. Rings tapped on oak tables, whiskey poured into crystal glasses. Decisions disguised themselves as concerns. They did not care about Lila. They did not care about the baby. They cared about power, Cole's power, and the sudden threat to it. Savannah's family moved quickly too. Phone calls, press leaks, meetings behind closed restaurant doors. Savannah sat silent in her father's study, hands folded in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She stared at the wall, expression hollow. Her father spoke sharply, pacing. "We are not the ones who will look foolish. We will hit them where it hurts." Savannah didn't respond. She didn't care about revenge. She didn't care about public sympathy. She didn't care about being right. She cared that she had been easy to leave. That was the wound that would scar. In the hospital, Cole stood by the nursery window. Rows of tiny cribs, soft pink blankets, dim, warm light. His daughter slept peacefully. So small, so quiet. The kind of quiet people destroy entire cities trying to protect. He heard footsteps behind him. He didn't turn. A voice spoke, low, measured, controlled. "You made a mistake, son." Cole's hands curled slowly at his sides. He turned. His father stood there, gray hair slicked back, suit perfectly pressed, presence heavy enough to fill the room. Cole didn't speak. His father looked past him, through the glass, to the baby. "She does not belong in this family," he said calmly. "As long as she exists, so does the threat. You understand that?" Cole didn't move. His father took a step closer. "We clean this, quietly, permanently." Cole's jaw tightened. A storm ignited behind his eyes. He spoke one single sentence, no hesitation, no warmth. "If you touch them, I will bury you." His father didn't flinch. Then, prepare to go to war. He walked away. The echo of his footsteps faded down the hallway. Cole stayed where he was, staring at his daughter, breathing, understanding exactly what came next. This wasn't drama. This wasn't heartbreak. This wasn't regret. This was the opening move of a war that began long before any of them realized. And Lila had no idea what was coming. Cole did not shout. He did not throw plates or make threats for others to hear. He made arrangements. The kind of arrangements that move like chess. Quiet pieces shifted across the board while the world watched fireworks. He called people who owed him nothing and paid them anyway. He leaned on lawyers who had been polite to his grandfather, and polite cost him nothing. He gathered evidence, invoices, shipping records, a ledger no one expected to exist, and sent it in sealed envelopes to newspapers and rivals. He waited until the stories landed, then he let them ferment. Contracts disappeared. Board seats evaporated under the weight of scandal. Men who had built empires on other men's backs found their names in court filings and wiretapped conversations they had assumed would never be read. Suppliers cut ties to avoid association. One by one, the pillars of the Blake power structure began to wobble. Savannah's father called lawyers and cried foul. He called reporters and planted counterclaims. He threatened. He offered hush money. He tried to leverage old friendships to spin the story. Each move turned into fodder for another headline. The more he pushed, the worse it got. People who had been happy to smile at charity galas now called lawyers. Cole watched it unfold from a small, anonymous room in the hospital where his daughter slept. He read transcripts, watched evidence, and then, quietly, he fed the pieces to a prosecutor who had more backbone than patience for the rich. The prosecutor opened a case. The city took notice. Men in expensive suits suddenly found their bank accounts frozen and their reputations shredded. This was not theater. This was surgical removal. Cole stripped away power the way someone might strip wallpaper to reveal rotten wood beneath. He exposed what his father had hidden and what the Blake family had used like currency. He did it without bloodshed. He did it with documents and witnesses and the patient cruelty of someone who had learned how to win by not playing the game everyone else assumed was honor. Savannah did not survive the collapse unscathed. Her father's companies lost bids. Family friends turned away. Invitations stopped arriving. The glossy life, the parties, the effortless entrance into power crumbled like a cake slashed at the center. She watched it happen from the silence of a house that suddenly felt like a museum of things she no longer owned. People talked about her on the news, not like a woman, but like a consequence. She tried to find Cole to fight him, to demand answers, but he was always either where the investigations were happening or beside Lila in quiet hospital rooms. There was no spectacle to mount. The city changed its tone. The elite no longer whispered only about love and wealth. Now whispers included fear. They looked at one another with the knowledge that loyalty was as ephemeral as a taped press conference. The Mercer name did not come out untouched in gossip. People noticed the difference. Not many took sides publicly. Most watched their back. Cole visited Lila twice a day. He held the baby at odd hours, when the news cameras had gone and the lights dimmed, when the world threw its scraps to those who begged for attention. He moved through his actions as if apologizing with every small kindness. He hired private security that never showed a uniform, men and women who waited in cars and patrolled routes. He closed some of his accounts. He resigned from parties he had once considered obligations. He gave up lunches that required speeches and small talk. He gave his time to a newborn and to the quiet, practical attacks he used to dismantle a family. Lila watched him and measured each move. She saw the care in his hands. She saw the exhaustion under his eyes. She watched him organize, bend, bargain. She saw him break down once in the car outside a courthouse, forehead pressed to the steering wheel, like a man trying to stop the pulse of grief inside him. And she kept the baby close. There were nights when she wanted to sink into fury and strike back at the man who had carved her life into pieces. There were mornings when she felt the surprise warmth of a small hand wrapped around her finger, and a tenderness rose where hate used to live. She told herself she would not be saved by a man's good deeds. She told herself she would not let a child become a reason to be manipulated again, but she also understood with a clarity that hurt that protecting a child meant tolerating a complicated truth. Cole had destroyed a system so Lila and their daughter could be safe. He had not done it for show. He had done it because he had chosen the cost. When the city quieted down, when the legal papers settled into their stacks and headlines moved on, something else had already begun to bud. People who had been quiet allies reached out. A woman in a church donated baby clothes. A former neighbor offered to babysit. A lawyer who owed a favor to a bakery owner offered to file pro bono counsel. Small mercies arrived like late-season sun. Cole declined invitations to rebuild bridges with the families who had tried to buy his loyalty back. He would not invite them into his home. He would not smile for their cameras. His revenge had not been spectacle. It had been a line drawn. He had made a choice that cost him everything he thought he needed. He had, in the process, given Lila a choice. Months later, the nursery smelled of lemon cleaner and new wood. The blinds were half open and the light came in soft and forgiving. A mobile spun above a crib where the baby slept with a face that seemed older than the hours she had been on Earth. Her breathing was even. The house had become a place of small rhythms. The rattle of a spoon, a lullaby hummed under breath, a stroller parked by the door. Lila sat in the rocker, the baby in her arms, the tiny blanket tucked around her shoulders. Cole sat opposite, a mug cooling on the table, hands empty for once. No staff hovered, no cameras. Just a kitchen clock and the faint hum of a city that had learned to be quieter after storms. "You should sleep," Cole said after a while. She shook her head and smiled without amusement. "You were never good at following doctor's orders." He laughed softly. The sound was rusty and honest. He reached for the baby as if to test a muscle that had been unused. She handed the child over without hesitation. The baby turned her head and rooted for a thumb. Cole obliged, and the little fist closed around his finger as if she had always known him. They watched her breathe. "Do you regret it?" Lila asked finally, the question small but steady. Cole considered the question like a man who had counted losses and found something unexpected in the sum. "I regret the cost," he said. "I regret the pain you felt. I regret that you thought I could not protect you, but I do not regret bringing her into the world." She looked at him hard, as if trying to name the truth in his face. "How do we move forward?" she asked. Cole's eyes softened. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, steady as a metronome. "We do it quietly," he said. "We live for her. We build a life that cannot be monetized or weaponized. We keep our circles small and our boundaries strict. We teach her truth." She studied him in the lamplight. Something shifted in her, less of a thaw and more a cautious clearing. She would not hand herself over to easy magic. She would not let promises be substitutes for action. "Will you tell her the truth when she can understand?" she asked. Cole nodded. "Everything when the time is right." They sat like that for a long time, two people in parallel trenches learning how to stand in the same field without collapsing. Outside, the city hummed with the low buzz of ordinary life. Inside, small minutes stitched themselves into more. There was a knock at the door, a soft, polite sound. Cole stood and opened it. A woman stood there with a box of baby clothes, homemade blankets bundled with care. Her hair was gray at the temples in the nicest way, and her hands trembled with age and kindness. "I heard," she said simply. "Thought you might need extra sleepers." Cole smiled in a way that had nothing to do with his name and everything to do with being a man who accepted help. She stepped inside like someone coming to check on a patient. Lila watched her and felt something old and comforting. Community, quiet and slow. Later, after the woman left with a promise to stop by again, Lila placed the baby down and crouched to brush a finger across a tiny cheek. The room felt full but contained, like a secret kept on purpose. Cole reached out and took her hand. His fingers linked with hers the way they had once been effortless. She did not pull away. "Will you ever forgive me?" he asked, the question small and dangerous. Lila looked up at him. The answer was not a single word. "Maybe," she said, "but not yet." He nodded. It was enough and not enough. He kissed her forehead once, a brief human thing. She let him. Outside, sirens wailed distantly, the city working through its own late-night trouble. Inside, in a small room bright with nightlight glow, A baby slept between them, breathing steady, a tiny metronome that measured minutes toward a future no one could predict. Cole watched the child, then watched Lila. He did not promise her the world. He promised, quietly and without spectacle, to be present. Lila closed her eyes for a second and opened them again. She looked at their daughter, at the man beside her, and at the small life they had built amid ruin. She inhaled. She exhaled. The story did not end in forgiveness or in fireworks. It ended in something narrower and perhaps truer. It ended in a beginning. And somewhere in the silence, a phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message. Unknown number. Cole glanced at it. His face did not change. He stood and read. Lila watched. His jaw tightened just a fraction, a shadow passing. He looked up, eyes steady. "We have one more problem," he said. Her hand tightened on the blanket. The baby stirred, small fingers curling. Outside, the night held its breath.